That's a good way to warm up the lungs there.
Hi.
No, my God.
Hi, everyone. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just so you know, if you were actually choking, I would be no help. But.
Okay. Hi, everyone. That's good to know. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Tiffany and I give our all to this podcast with curating information, researching platforms, and creating a show with the best up-to-date information we can and, apparently emergency situational insurance. We have a vested interest in the growth and health of your business and hope you feel the same way about us. Because of that, we have joined Patreon. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month, and you will gain access to our community, exclusive behind the scenes, speaker access, publicity for your business, which could be huge, webinar discount opportunities, and more. So please support us so that we can continue supporting you. And from there, hello and welcome to the business behind small business. Whether you're selling or staying, we're here to remind you that just because you own a business doesn't mean you are a business owner. We are your hosts, Savannah Stone,
Tiffany Ko.
There's a lot of business behind small business, so let's get to it. So this is different for us.
In so many ways.
We thought we would try. We thought
I can actually touch you
through
the screen.
Yeah. So we thought that it would be great for us to present our podcast, maybe moving forward. We're going to see how this goes. Together. Because one, we really do like each other a lot. And we also want to make this feel more natural and more of an opportunity for us to banter with one another. And plus it gives me, I can have my nice hot chai. A little
right around our equipment.
I know.
Making me so nervous. I'm like, it takes us one sweep and then this is going to be the end of us.
Maybe. So... we really like each other's personalities as well. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Do you know who you are? Do you really? Are you willing to do some digging? Maybe look into the mirror and admit to yourself that you can't let go of control. You're too easily persuaded. Maybe you can be lazy at times. Maybe you can't pay enough attention to pay attention. Or that you overshare. Like me, like all the time.
Preceded by the words, this is TMI.
Yeah, totally. These attributes may be what make you you. However, some of these characteristics could also be what's holding your company back or bringing it down. This isn't going to be a pretty show on any level. We're going to get real and we may get a little mean, but know that we say this because we want the best for you. We're going to do some introspection today on whether your personality is sinking or soaring your business. But before we begin, please note our disclaimer. This is available in both our show notes and on our website and should be referred to before and or after this podcast.
So we're actually starting with a very specific personality, which I think you and I both relate to. I would like to call myself a self-recovering people pleaser.
Me
but
too.
there are times it comes across, right? Because it's hard once it's ingrained in you. So today we're going to talk about people-pleasing personalities and how that actually mixes well or doesn't mix well when you are the owner of a business. So let's start with, how do you know if you're a people pleaser? So there's a couple things. This is a little bit broad. So, don't, the psychologists and all the people out there listening to us who probably are licensed to tell you this, do not come out.
Yeah, there's a whole lot more detail to this. We're speaking specifically to owning a business and how it affects your business.
Exactly.
Don't come at us.
Please don't. So high level wise, if you answer yes to what I'm about to say, which is our 5 traits of people pleasing, then, maybe you are a people pleaser. And remember, there is a spectrum, right? So you could be, extreme or light, just be self-aware. That's all we're saying. So if the word no never comes out of your mouth, because they know might be disappointing somebody or hurting their feelings, and you feel resistance to it, and you find yourself saying yes more than you would like, you may have a little bit of a people-pleasing tendency there. You go above and beyond to impress people. But not that that in itself is a bad thing, but you do it even when it's inconvenient and it's uncomfortable to you. Because again, we go back to the whole, don't want to disappoint somebody or make them feel sad. Sometimes you struggle with criticism, right? It's really hard to hear that, right? Or you're sorry when it's not even your fault. Like I do this sometimes. I say sorry. It's not like I don't mean it. I just say sorry to make the situation a little more comfortable. But I'm also very aware when I'm saying it for a specific purpose versus like I really feel sorry. And I think as a people pleaser, like you actually say sorry and you mean it, like for some reason, even though it's in reality not your fault.
Yeah, and women tend to say sorry way more often than men do.
That's true. You feel pretty devastated when you think somebody doesn't like you or approve of you, right? So it's funny when I was like reading this, and I don't know if have you ever watched Friends? Like, are you a big Friends? But remember that point when Monica Geller could not get over the fact that somebody dislikes her?
Yes.
Like, it
infuriated her.
She just so much. She's like, why would you not? I don't remember what the situation was, but she was like, why would you not like? How can you not like me, right? And it just eats at her. And I remember watching that and laughing, but also kind of crying a little bit on the inside, going, I don't know what you mean. Yes, that's right. And then, last but not least, you hate conflict and uncertainty in any relationship, right? So we're talking about not just personal relationships, but maybe relationships with your customers, relationship with your employees, relationship with people who you work with, like vendors and whatnot. So you feel very, like you try to avoid conflict as much as possible. Probably confrontation goes along.
I would say that goes as far as having conflict issues with the C-suite in your company too.
Your own management team. That should be interesting, right? So the only thing I could say is that if you said yes to a lot of these, you might actually feel the way I feel, which is the fact that it's completely exhausting. This is why I'm saying I'm a self-recovering pleaser.
And it's self-deprecating too.
It is. And it hits you really hard, especially if you're a business owner, right? Because imagine, like negotiations are technically confrontations, or if you have employees and you're trying to give them some really good feedback, sometimes that comes across as confrontations, right? Or you have employees and maybe you didn't hire the right one, maybe they're just not the 8th student in your team, and their feedback is making you feel uncomfortable because you know that you are quote unquote making them feel bad, right? So it becomes really hard when you're a business owner who's also having people pleasing tendencies. Now, the great thing is that as a people pleaser, like I guess leader of your organization, there are also a lot of plus that comes with it, right? You're probably somebody who also really values the people you work with, right? You really, really, maybe someone's to a fault, value them a lot, which was my problem. When I first started, I believed in a potential gap. Apparently everybody had potential, and I had to see the potential through, even to my own devastation at times.
Yes.
And it's also really expensive.
It is. You feel it in your wallet, in your pocketbook, and you're like, oh, maybe I should say no.
Exactly. So that's where that that uncomfortableness and that resistance comes from. You also serve pretty selflessly, right? You are very genuine in your. So we were saying before this, Stefana wants to turn off all her ringtones. Now we know why, because she has a ringtone that goes like that.
I had turned it off, I thought.
Somebody got through anyway.
Somebody got through. I apologize. But hey, that's what happens when you are, filming live. And hey, we are in business still.
Yeah, we're not cutting that out. It is what it is.
It is.
Okay, so you also serve pretty selflessly, right? Because that's just who you are. You are a nice person, right? And yes, the people-pleasing tendencies may sometimes not be the best thing, but that's also one of the reasons why I think you do serve as selfless as you are. So you're positive, you're inspiring in the way that you actually approach people and connections. And that's a really good thing. At least it is in my book. You value other people's strengths and talents, right? Maybe some of it comes from this understanding, like sometimes like maybe you're not so valued and your talents don't always get seen because, you're the nice person in the room, right? And you always let other people take the spotlight. So maybe there's a little bit of that. And I think it does somewhat make you a little bit more sensitive and empathetic to other people's feelings, just being in that position. So there is a lot of plus to having the people-pleasing tendencies. Now, with the plus, there's the negatives, right? And that's okay. So I firmly believe in a lot of these is that one, people who have people-pleasing tendencies tend to wear yourself out, right?
Yes.
Burnout is a real thing. You probably wear yourself out because you're giving so much and you're not refilling your bucket, right? So you just get worn out. You probably take on a little too much too. Probably part of the reason why you're burned out because you don't assign, you don't delegate as much as you could or should, right? Again, it goes back to the whole, am I making them sad? Am I making them work too hard? Am I the cause of that grief, I guess? You probably may even avoid taking charge or you have difficulty making decisions, right? Because there's so many more factors in your head now. It's not just about the cold hard facts. You just have all these considerations that maybe somebody else with less people pleasing tendencies or none of it don't tend to react to. You find yourself sugarcoating responses or resisting honest feedback, right? Sugarcoating, I feel like, is like beating around a bush.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever really had that issue.
Yeah, but that I always called it the cinnamon roll, and I feel like Virginia is very cinnamon roll, where you just keep going around and around and around, and you add so many nice things to it.
She just went there. She just set the whole state.
I sure did.
Okay.
This was my observation when I moved here from Detroit, whereas there they kind of punch you with how they feel. And here it's like, bless her heart, she's so sweet, but, and then they get to the point, then they get to the center of it. But there were so many niceties that were attached to it. Like, if you have time, but I understand if you don't, I would really like it if you could take care of this whenever you have time. But really what they mean is whenever you have time means right now.
That is true. On the East Coast, usually it means like right now or as of yesterday or, by the end of the day. Again.
But as a people pleaser, if you are like maybe not on the East Coast, you're somewhere else. But even as a people pleaser, you don't want to make the person feel like they have to do something. But then you're also setting up a parameter of, whenever I get to it, could be next week. Right?
Boundaries. So we'll get to setting boundaries as a way to curtail some people-pleasing tendencies. Right? It's okay. You're allowed to jump all the way. Not all this stuff is scripted all the time. And I think the longer we do this, the less scripted we become, which I'm sure we have. So that's good. Let's keep jumping. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of just sugarcoating stuff and whatnot. But I think you know what we're talking about, right? Essentially, you find it hard to kind of get to the point because you're so worried about how the other person's going to feel once you deliver the real news to them, which, as you imagine as an owner, when you have to deliver that feedback to your employee, which is vital, if they're not productive enough or effective enough in their job, it's really hard to balance the two, like the internal struggle you probably feel. Now, sometimes because of this, you end up accidentally, if not intentional, unintentional, creating like a false facade of friendliness.
Yeah.
Because you're not really saying how you feel. Like you feel how you feel, it's fine, but you're not really saying it. And now what you end up doing is just kind of faking it a little bit, right? And that's not cool. Just saying, it's not cool, but that's okay. That's okay. We were going to get down to a lot of this. And actually, I think we're going to probably both suggest some ways that kind of helps, how would you say, helps with these opposing forces you feel within you to help deal with some of this real life situations.
Yes.
So a couple other things like you may end up overlooking your own plans, your feelings, your needs, which of course is true. You probably tolerate bad behavior, which again goes back to the whole employee thing because you can't really say how you really feel. They're not getting the message because you're not saying how you really feel. Anyways, you get what I mean. And sometimes you may actually end up just being resentful, right, of yourself or whatever the situation is because maybe you didn't put your input as much as you would like, and it didn't happen the way you would like to have happen, and it didn't come out in your favor, and now you're just resentful of the fact. And then this last one, I feel like, this part we might get a little mean, but it's kind of true, right? And again, it depends on the spectrum of people pleasing that you're in, but you may find yourself, just be honest with yourself. We're not judging. It's just that it happens. Is you may find yourself manipulating people to avoid asking for what you really want because you can't directly ask it. So anyways, I'm just saying, be honest with yourself. however you feel it is.
And sometimes you don't even realize that you're being manipulative. So maybe let somebody else be honest with you too.
Oh, that's a good one. This is why we're friends. Okay. So then it kind of taking it back to like business wise, there's a couple of things I just want to pointedly kind of point out, kind of like symptoms in your business. Like if you are an owner who is a people pleaser, and there's a couple of things I think a lot of people here can relate to, right? You may see a lot of scope creep happening with you and your clients, right? Again, it comes with the whole, I can't really say no. I don't really want to say no. Your client may be a little bit more direct, so you kind of don't push back. And then you just start falling into this pattern of having scope creep, which means that, you set out an expectation of what you're going to provide to your customer, and your customer pushes the edge a little bit. Before you know it, you're providing things that you didn't intend to provide.
And probably not charging for it.
And probably not charging enough, which leads me to my second point, which is underpricing. So I find a lot of new business owners, especially if they have very strong people-pleasing tendencies, kind of come out the gate severely underpricing their service or their product, right? Because again, they're so worried about that negative kind of feedback, or what they perceive to be negative feedback, that they rather just avoid it altogether by severely underpricing. And that's not great in business. If you are, so that's with your customers. If you're an owner who's a people pleaser with your employees, you'll find yourself that you're probably overextending yourself, right? You're probably taking on a lot of work that you can delegate to them and assign to them, but you're simply not able to let it go, right? And then that in turn adds on to the fact that now your employees are underutilized, which, and money in businesses means money. Right.
Well, and
right, for the most part.
And to be fair, that's I guess a trait of more than just a people pleaser, but
That's
a people
true,
pleaser
kind of
will,
drives it a little bit.
a people pleaser will not relinquish control simply because they don't want to
upset
their
employees or make them work overtime, or what they perceive as overtime. Right. So that's right. We're not psychologists or anything like that. So there's a lot of other factors to this, but again, these are just maybe some very broad side effects of being a people pleaser business owner. Right. And then, of course, you end up with kind of a more owner-centric business because everything comes back to you. And then you find that it's hard to set boundaries, and like, especially even in your own culture. If you have a lot of employees, and let's just say you have one employee that's kind of an a-hole for whatever reason, you might find it really hard for you to set boundaries and make sure that you're clear as to what your culture should be, because again, you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. So, okay. Okay, so I found this article on Psychology Today. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I don't know if all the people who write the articles are psychologists, but I do find it's always really entertaining to find stuff on Psychology Today about personality traits. And so they had a nice article, which we'll link in the show notes below, about what if you are a business owner who actually have people pleasing or employees with people pleaser tendencies, which also makes it a tricky waters to navigate, right? And so keep in mind there's it's a spectrum. So this article is talking about kind of the extreme, like somebody who was very heavy on the people pleasing. So, but I did find it kind of it was kind of entertaining to read. So one of the things the article said that if you're an owner and your employee is a people pleaser, sometimes you just got to watch out for the fact that your people pleaser employee may appear really friendly, really charming, really helpful, and really capable, but it might be a little problematic sometimes, especially if you have something that you need them to work on, like a project or some kind of goal you want them to achieve, because they're so busy trying to help everybody else out that's been asking them for help that they kind of lose sight of the goal. So they may not be working on what you really want done, but they're being somewhat productive because they're helping other people, but that can kind of cause some issues because you really need to get this done. So that's kind of that was kind of an interesting aspect. I didn't quite think about how that would happen. Now, the article also says that major people pleasers may actually dodge your concern, fabricate, and maybe even gaslight you as the owner, right? And so I thought this was good enough to actually quote from the article. It says that confronting a major league people pleaser about such frustrating behaviors, and you may actually get essentially the Bryan Adams song, "Everything I do for you" argument. The people pleaser may claim that all of his or her people-pleasing efforts are simply to help you. Such logic can seem kind of twisted as fettuccine on a ceiling fan, since the super-duper people pleaser's actions may actually be making your life more difficult. Ultimately, this whole Bryan Adams argument can be nothing more than a bunch of hot air, an attempt to pin you as the motivation rather than the real motivation, which is the all-star people pleaser's compulsion to actually please others.
I agree.
I thought that was so interesting. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's so right on. The other thing to also realize that sometimes if you have people pleasers as employees, they may end up criticizing you behind your back, right? And this is, a less, and this kind of speaks to people who are a little bit less self-aware that they're people pleasers themselves. But what they'll do is they may view you as the owner as kind of the punching bag, which is, I get it. It happens because you're more familiar. You're, to let loose and kind of with indiscriminate criticism of you simply because he or she feels more comfortable around you. And that may be because the people pleaser feels more constrained and fearful around others. And so they're less willing to release their frustrations around them, but they may release their frustrations around you, which might be a little too friendly with your employee at that point if they feel healthy to do that. Although I've been in that situation and I put myself in that situation. So,
well, and sometimes I think that they will talk behind your back, even if it's unwarranted. Just so that there's some level of a connection between themselves and another employee to create a camaraderie, us against them.
Yeah, that's true. Get ready for a riot. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but people pleasers will do that because they want everyone to like them. So one of the ways that they can make everyone like them is
getting behind a common cause.
Yes.
Yeah. So just be aware. I mean, the thing is, like, when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with people, right? People comes with all sorts of personality and everything like that, Focus it good. I think that's what we're trying to say, right? It doesn't mean that they're terrible employees and they're not productive and you shouldn't hire them. It's just focus their energy for good. Because they can also, gang up behind a very good cause for their business.
Absolutely.
Right? So it just is. Anyways, so all in all to say the solution to all this, even in Psychology Today, and most of the articles that I've read to research for this really is like, number one is set clear boundaries. Be very, very clear, because the clearer boundaries you have, the easier it is to spot when somebody crosses them, right? And so if the people you're working with or people yourself, you set those boundaries, it's clear for everybody, like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And it works both ways, right? It's not that you have a set of rules for yourself because you're a people pleaser boss and a set of rules for your employees. It's the same, so that you can make sure that it's very apparent and it's very transparent whenever something isn't happening the way it's supposed to. All right.
Oh, agreed.
What you got? So much.
I can
feel it.
I feel like in my business, I come across a lot of different personalities. And I do recognize pretty quickly from talking to the business owner whether or not they are going to be easy to work with, really understand that they are a business owner, and truly whether or not they will stay in business. It's never in the things that they say. It's always in the way that they say them. It's really no different than when you make a new friend, meet a new neighbor, or start working with a new colleague. A personality will permeate all aspects of a person's life and the success they have with it. The saying, birds of a feather flock together, is really true. And in the realm of business, this is what creates culture. If you're toxic, you either hire toxic or you hire people who are easily manipulated. And I mean that in a nice way, like people that you feel like you could put your thumb on, whether or not you're willing to admit it. These are people who are easily swayed. They're kind, they're obedient. And these people don't tend to stay in toxic environments for very long. So if you're wondering what the deal is with your revolving door of employees, it might not be the current atmosphere, like the job forecasting or the culture, the job rate, the area that you live in, the economy. I mean, it's you. It's definitely you. So there are some ways in which you can determine whether or not you're the drama. Am I the drama? Am I the drama?
Sometimes you have to stop and ask yourself that.
Yes. So ponder this. Do you have a nice sized staff? And yet you find yourself doing a lot of the tasks because you just know that they can't do it like you or do it right? Like, they'll never get this. I got to do it. Or do you feel like you could ask someone on your staff to take on these chores or tasks, but you don't want them to get mad at you, which goes back to the whole people pleasing. Both of these traits, a control freak and the people pleasing person, can be detrimental to the growth and the health of your business. So maybe you're not either of these things. Maybe in your mind, you're none of these things. And I'm wrong. Tiffany's wrong. And we're just wasting your time. That's fine. You know that you're just really good at what you do. Cool. That's not what I should be focusing on here. All right. Well, before you hit that stop button, I want you to do something for me. Take a personality test. Take a personality test, just for giggles. You'll find something about you that's either attracting people with that negative energy or keeping them away, the positive people. Maybe you're a control freak. Maybe you're a people pleaser. Maybe you're not. However, are you an over complainer? Are you negative? Do you tend to see things in a negative connotation? Perhaps you overshare. Maybe
talk that way too if you're negative.
Yeah. Maybe you lack empathy.
Well,
maybe you're just closed-minded and everyone's opinions are trash, and because you know better, I'm just throwing darts.
For popping a balloon, we don't apologize. This is why you're here.
Yes.
To get some truth. But, and the thing is, I think at the end of the day, we just got to remember, there's nothing wrong with any of this. Right?
No.
There's nothing wrong with you. Or
it is who you are.
It is what is part of the unique composition of you, right? But being aware of that and knowing that you're playing in a game, the game of business, which is actually a people game at the end of the day, right? I don't care what anybody tells you. It's a people game. You need to understand where you thrive and where you may, need a little adjustment on, especially if you meet somebody of a conflicting personality, right? Or complimenting, which just makes it worse. You just need to be aware so you can just adjust and then start to surround yourself with the people that strengthen your weakness, or maybe they could replace your weakness in some way, shape, or form, whatever that weakness is. So I want you to do a little bit of soul searching and really be honest about your faults. If you can match those faults with the faults of your processes or the people you have working for you, for example, if you're a procrastinator, so that's what I'm saying, like work off of your weaknesses, strengthen your weaknesses. If you're a procrastinator, you likely don't have processes. You also likely have people working for you that aren't fully trained or fully skilled for the positions you've put them in. There may not be much of a culture in your company because you've not given it the focus that it needs. There may be a disconnect with everyone that works for you and with you and you in the business. Sometimes these are very subtle, so you'll have to put the time and effort to root these things out. If your company either doesn't have a culture or it does, but it's not it's not one that anyone wants to be a part of, remember the culture of your company is an extension of your personality. I mean, really, like, would you agree? I kind of feel like the owner of the business is the core or the core, ground zero of where the culture begins. Yes, I think no matter how removed you are, even if you are a founder and now you're removed by like 10 layers of management in between from like the entry level staff to who you are, you still set the tone, right? And you set the tone not because you're directly related, like you're not directly connected to them by any means, but you set the tone by how you do things, how you say things to your management team, how your management team gets that feedback, how your management team actually, flows that down. Like you set the tone. And that's also why it's a great thing about business. You can have two businesses that do the exact same thing, but runs very differently because the owners are very different people. And that's kind of what I feel like brings the color to every business, and why why I always say, like, just because you thought of an idea, you want to do a business that somebody else already has done, doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because you're going to bring a unique spin to it. That's only you. But I think that's true in any business. So
Yeah. And granted, this is a bit of a reach, but I feel like that is when someone says, why should I buy from you? Or why should I use your services? That's when you can answer that question, because there may be 5 other people doing the exact same thing you're doing, but none of them are you. So there's something about you that you're bringing. There's a different flavor that you're adding that your customers or clients are going to get that they wouldn't get from someone else. But you have to do the research and you have to do the homework on what that is, good or bad. If you're a hard-nosed person, for example, you're going to have a quiet, insecure staff that are afraid to come to you. And they were not going to want to share their ideas with you. They're not going to tell you how they feel. Sometimes they'll just exit out. They'll just quit. And
some of them will not even go stay around to give you feedback.
Nope.
They just quit.
You don't want to be that boss, and you may not even know that you're that boss. So you got to take the time to figure it out.
Well, I would say that you can be that boss if you want to be, right? But don't be that boss and then complain why people won't stay around and work.
For sure.
Right. So you just need to understand the consequences of what you're doing, right? That a good or bad in context is just, is it going to get you to where you want to go?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not, and you're complaining about that, then you need to do a little soul searching and figure out, well, how are you the cause of what's happening?
So let's talk about what kind of culture your personality created within your company.
What year are we asking, right?
I don't know. I guess it all depends on, I don't know, pick a year.
So I was very naive when I hired. I was definitely a major people pleaser when I first started, and I knew that, and I didn't know the implications of that until I started really hiring people. Yeah, boy, it was an expensive lesson to learn, let me tell you. So yes, I was a big people pleaser. I think it wasn't until, I definitely had like rounds, right? So one thing is, it also forced me to learn how to fire people, which isn't fun either. So you do that a few times and you realize you better shore yourself up real quick unless you want to keep going through firing people, because that is not a fun conversation to have, right? Unless for some reason you enjoy that, which, hey, good for you. But I did not enjoy that. And so when I, started staring at the whole hard truth of making the business viable while trying to make everybody feel good, the truth of the matter is, it's not about making everybody feel good. It's about creating a viable business that can actually support everybody and everybody's salary that's in that business. And so I had to do a little soul searching myself. I ended up with, I had a group of people that I started with, and this is not their fault by any means. And as much as I enjoyed working with them, I do think that my people-pleasing tendencies made it a hard culture for them to thrive in, to the point that at some point, I naturally or by force eventually did 100% turnover of all of the kind of the early set of employees that I took on, because they weren't ready for the next level of the business. And I think when I had hired them, again, I believed in the potential gap. I didn't want anybody to feel bad. Like, I hired them with the intention of taking them with me, but then stared at the cold hard truth that I cannot afford to train them up to be ready for that level. And so that was just the truth. I just didn't, there's no resources, time or money to be able to do that. Right. So I had to learn pretty quickly to kind of drop that. And the one thing I knew, which I think my HR person was the one that kind of told me the truth on it. I actually had an HR consultant, which was actually really helpful. That's what helped me balance the whole people pleasing thing, because I knew I had these tendencies and I needed somebody to help make sure that I was called out when I was doing that, and make sure that prevented me from making decisions without running it by somebody with like a clear eye on things that was outside the organization and outside of my head. That really helped. And I remember there was one point where things were a little tough, especially when you're doing like a turnover. I was turning around the business and stuff like that. And one of my employees, for whatever reason, felt that it was safe enough to give me some of her honest feedback. And the good thing is, at that point in my instinct, and I ran it by my HR just to be sure that I wasn't crazy. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm doing this right. If I was doing this right, she would not have felt that comfortable. Right? Look, I don't mind feedback at all, right? But it's a matter of, you can tell when you created something where the lines are so fuzzy that they felt that comfortable. And part of it, like I said, is the people pleasing, right? You're almost seeing it more as their friend and like, things like that you didn't set the lines for them, so they didn't understand the lines, right? So that was kind of like my aha moment, that it actually works better both ways. When as the as the leader, you set the boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and you stick to them as well as you make them stick to it. You make it clear to everybody, and it's a better environment overall. So my second and third round of like hiring and employees actually went a lot better once I got that concept. But I have to tell you though, it does help because I love, I hate to say this, I actually really enjoy hiring employees with people-pleasing tendencies. They're very pleasant to work with. They're very much driven, and they're because of the fact that they have this perfectionism and people-pleasing kind of tendency in them. But I love it too because I know that for me, being somebody who came from that world, I will never take advantage of them. And they go anywhere else, other people will take advantage. It's very easzy for other people to take advantage of that.
I agree.
So I feel much better about being able to pull them back and make sure they don't get burnt out and they're not overworking themselves, and helping them balance their workload and spotting things when they're saying yes to things they really shouldn't say yes to, and helping kind of coach them on that. And, just basically creating a safe work environment for them. So I actually really started enjoying and I did actually end up hiring quite a few people who had that tendency. Yeah. But like I said, in context, it's not a weakness. It is a strength, right? So it's just things depends on the situation and the context you're using them in. But in this case, it's not a weakness. And I think, I thought it was a great team that we had. So again,
I feel like we're counterpointing and raw truthing here, which is fine with me, because I feel like you can't really counterpoint a situation like this, because there is no right answer. There's no wrong answer to what kind of personality you should have. However, I think that some of our own personal experiences could maybe help you navigate in how you should find what your strengths and your weaknesses are. So in my case, I had lived in Virginia before, but I spent so much of my life in Michigan that when I moved back here,
culture shock.
Totally. And, I'd like to think that this is a genetic thing, but no one in my family has a filter. So not only do we not have filters, but I'm also look at me. Okay, so the people not watching us can't look at me, but you can hear me. You can hear it in my voice. There's nothing small about me. So I recognize that people tend to have a pretty snap judgment of who I am. Either they are attracted or they are shunned. They are not shunned, but either I attract
or deflect.
Deflect. That's the word. Deflect. Shun. I don't know what I was thinking.
Okay.
Boing. Yeah. Pating. That just went tinging right off of me.
Okay.
Yes, I'm deflecting people. So I find that some people just are not a huge fan of my big personality. So, and just know that I have to speak at a much quieter level than my normal voice so that I don't blow your eardrums out. Because I talk at a louder decibel than this normally. And because
wait till she gets excited.
Oh my gosh, it's just it's craziness. It's crazy town. So I recognize this about myself. And in the 2 years, between when I had moved here and when I had decided to start my company, I knew that I had recognized that there was a need here. I recognized that there was something that I could offer the people here that I didn't think I could offer anyone in Michigan if I were to ever move back. So I thought, now's a great time. The country's in a deep recession. Why don't I start a company? That's a great idea.
While pregnant with your third child.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Well, I got pregnant after.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
But I was like, you know what? If you're going to go through hell, just keep on going. So anyway, I thought I should brush up on my inner communication skills. So I took 2 classes at the local community college. One was inner communication and relationships. And the other one was public speaking. Not that I needed help with public speaking, but I did need to learn how to speak this area, Virginia, Maryland, DC. I needed to learn how to speak to the people here.
There is definitely a way of speaking here.
Yes.
That
does not
unless you're not from here, you don't realize that it's not the same. It's not even the same. You drive an hour and a half south.
For sure.
It's really not the same.
It's crazy passive aggressive here.
Okay, yeah, there's some of that.
Some. It's very passive aggressive, and so
it's a little political. Come on now.
It's very political.
Where we are, yes, but no, you're right. Yes, there is a lot of passive aggressiveness.
Yeah, and there's a
That
lot
tends
to be
the default.
Yes, and there's a lot of expectation in the things that are not said, as opposed to the things that are said. So I had to figure out what that meant, and what that meant in a corporate setting too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I came from a sales background, and I came from a sales background in a demographic that did not match the demographic of which I was hoping to open my business in and have the types of clients in. So, in saying that, that helped me really realize what kind of a person I am. As a worker, as an employee, I am absolutely 100% a people pleaser. What do you want? What do you need? What I got it for you.
What can I say yes today?
Yeah. What can I say yes to? Exactly. What can I do for you? I am the giving tree. But I knew that I didn't want to be that kind of boss. Yeah. So I have.
It's not fair to your employees either.
No. And I have those two pieces to me, opposing pieces. People look at me and they think that I'm this hard-nosed, person. And then here I am, like, what can I do for you? Here, take all the apples off this tree. Mm-hmm. Right. So I started to hire against my weaknesses so that I would have people working for me that are people pleasers, but are also not afraid to say how they feel. Mm-hmm. They don't feel comfortable enough to tell me how they feel, which I'm okay with. Yeah. However, I do worry that I come off a little too brash, I might hurt some, and I do come off a little insulting sometimes.
I haven't seen it yet, but hey.
I know, but I recognize it in me. So I have my relationship manager. She's the bad cop.
See?
But she's not a bad cop, if that makes any sense. Like, she comes off so much. Yeah, she comes off so nice that it's not a tone that registers in this body. So that's why I hired her. That's why I hired the people that I hired that are part of my internal management. Mm-hmm. Because they strengthen my weaknesses, mm-hmm. but I recognized what my weaknesses are. Now, on the other side of that, I have come across enough clients and have fired clients that do not recognize their weaknesses. There are some that I'm like, listen, I can't do nothing for you. If you are not going to let go of control, I don't know what to tell you. Or the ones that just are thinking of steps 15 and 20 and yet to finish step 2 or even 1. And that's a detriment to their business. That's a detriment to their company. It's a detriment to their future.
Well, it's hard as service providers. You're out of your depth, and you're certainly out of your scope to mm-hmm. to discuss something like that with your client, right? So you mm-hmm. kind of just observe it, and you kind of have to deal with it, or you let it go by letting them go with it. But yeah, it's interesting watching from the sidelines, because then doing what you do too, you probably do see the effects of that in their business, because then you have to interact. At least in our service industry, mm-hmm. you got to interact with like employees, right? So you mm-hmm. can tell the culture and what type it is and what people do by who the owner is, like their personality. It's always a very interesting, for me, it's always like an interesting discovery. Like, oh, okay.
Oh, I get it now. Now I understand. I mean, and that could be said for restaurants. That could be said for clothing stores. It doesn't have to be. We speak from what we know, right? Mm-hmm, like we come from a service background. However, it can be said to any company that is also selling products, even if it's a transactional product, like, they may or may not come back, a bar or maybe a restaurant or, whatever it is, something that maybe they'll come back, but it's not a place in which you are definitely building relationships. Like, that's not the core or the crux of your business.
How did you sell as a people pleaser? You said you were in selling.
Yeah.
How did you sell when you're a people pleaser? I mean, I feel like that is like a very... the job not to get.
It had to do with the demographic that I was dealing with.
Okay.
I have taken, I was in jewelry. So I did drive about an hour and a half to deliver.
So you did do some like very open, like.
Oh, yeah.
above and over and above.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah, okay.
But I tell you what, like, I'll never forget this. And it made me feel a little bit better about my people pleasing self. Were we married then? No, I guess my husband was my fiance at the time. Okay. I'm thinking about where we lived at that time. Either we were married or not. I don't know, whatever. So it had to be somewhere between 1996 and 1994 and 98. So in between 1994 and 98, somewhere around there, when televisions had the big tube in the back and they were very, very heavy. So we were at Sears and we bought a television, and
kids
it was
nowadays are like, that's so retro.
That's a thing. Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. So I ran into one of my customers there. And he was buying whatever he was buying. And he's like, are you guys going to be able to, he goes, do you have elevators in your apartment? And I was like, no, elevators. And he goes, what floor do you live on? I said, I live on the 3rd floor. And he goes, oh, where do you live? And I said, I'm, just down the street. And he goes, do you want me to come and help you? Wasn't that so sweet? He helped us take that television up three stories. And this was not like, he was not a fit man. I mean, he was an older gentleman, and he was, again, not a very fit man, but he did that because I had gone out of my way for him.
Well, see, not everybody's like that.
No.
Yes. And then that's what I would agree with too, about surrounding yourself with the right people. If you know that this is your tendency, do not surround yourself with people who will take advantage of that tendency. Right? Like, just don't. Like, you surround yourself with people who have a very strong sense of fairness, right? Because they're not going to take advantage of your people-pleasing tendencies, right? They'll actually probably stop you before you actually get there.
Yeah.
Which is nice, yeah.
Yeah, which is why the person that I have as my relationship manager, she is the opposite in a good way to me. So we fit well with one another. There are times in which my directness comes in handy. There are times.
I'm sure there is.
There are times when her ability to kind of soften the blow comes in way handier.
Oh man!
So and then my people pleasing self will come out sometimes where I'm like, well, that's okay. Maybe we can do it. And she'll be like, no, we're not. we're not putting up with that. So she will stop me from pleasing to the point in which it's detrimental.
Yeah, to yourself.
Yeah. So
you need the nice compliment. I kind of wish I had a nice opposing force like that. No, I had to learn it the hard way.
Yeah.
I had to learn to be very aware of when the people pleasing is overly extending itself, right? Like, instead of be really aware of that. And then I think I went to the opposite. So I started super people pleasing in a business. And then finally one year, it was probably that year too, when I had the turnover and I was trying to turn a business around, I was trying to get ready for sell. I'm only 3-4 years in, right? I'm still a young, learning entrepreneur at that point, right? I still didn't know what the hell half the stuff I was doing. But then, so I went to the extreme end where for a year, and I swear this worked. I had no idea this worked for me. So it's disclaimer right now, this worked for me, right? But I don't know what got in my head, but I was like, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of me doing this thing in this certain way. You know what? For the next year, it happened to be at the start of the year. I was like, you know what? For the next 12 months, my new motto in life will be this. It is not me. It is definitely you. It's very therapeutic for a year. Let me tell you, right?
I bet.
The opposite extreme, right? Because that's probably not, you don't want to be walking around with that motto forever, right? But it was very therapeutic because it actually did help me kind of really see that there are situations I know because of my tendency, it was very easy to be taken advantage of, right? And that helped me really kind of understand or see more clearly that, hey, no, this is not me. This is you being, you, right? And it doesn't mix with me. And you know what? I'm sorry. I'm not sorry that I said no. That's on you. That's your fault. I'm moving on. See you later, right? Quite liberating. Clearly, it also has stayed with me for some time since then.
Well, I mean, maybe I recognized it earlier on because I had been in sales for so long.
Maybe that's what I was like. Wow, because that's hard. Because I severely underpriced myself when I first started because of that.
Well, I think I might have shared this with you before, but I started working in my uncle's jewelry shop at 11.
Yeah, you started really young.
And he had a manager who was, oh my God, this woman was insane. However, she wasn't working because she needed the money. She was a friend of my uncle and my aunt at the time, and her husband were very, very successful. They were very successful entrepreneurs. They would create something, sell it, create something, sell it. So she was just working to bide her time, older lady. And that woman taught me so much about business that I really didn't need to know at that age, but it stayed with me. A lot of the things that she said, if not all of the things she said, really, really changed my thoughts on business ownership. And, her voice echoed the whole time I was building the company. So there was a lot to be said for that. Plus, I also worked for another uncle of mine and some other friends, family friends of ours. Almost everyone on my dad's side of the family owns a business. So, it was that kind of upbringing. Yeah. And it was all, in a sales environment or in a service environment that really shaped how I saw myself. So,
well, I would say that sometimes being direct is not a bad thing. There's a time and place that you should be direct,
and there are ways to be direct. There's one thing I can say about this area is that they really know how to say things and mean in a really nice way. So, anyway, moving on.
Okay, all right. Before they run us out of the DMV area.
I know, right?
Heaven's sake. I actually really like this area. But whatever.
Hey, I do too. I have found that this fits me way better than when I first moved here. I really like that there is a true spirit here that's
very unique location.
Very
where
unique.
We are. It's not LA. It's not New York. It's not just like all those places have their very unique personalities and cities. Like our city, DMV area rather, since we have like 3 states here. Like it's a very unique mix of people that come through here, and all the time. Sometimes every 4 years, sometimes every 2 years. Guess why? But just saying that it makes it very it makes it pretty alive. It makes it always interesting, like all the time. So there's certain personalities.
I've actually thought about that before because I've always felt like LA holds the media, New York holds the money, and DC holds the power. And you're going to find that maybe that's not exactly the same in New York, LA, and DC, but the way that they see themselves.
I think Texas has got really offended that they were not included on the list.
I know, right? Texas holds the hairspray.
and now Savannah's banned from entering Texas.
Hey,
wow, you just angered a lot of Texans.
I know. I'm sorry. I love Texas. I really, really love Texas. It's a beautiful state. I had so much fun when I was there for the first time, and hopefully not the last. So love you, Texas. Anyway, and
please don't come after us.
Don't come after me unless you've got hairspray in your head. In each episode,
moving on. Quickly.
We like to connect a famous example to our discussion to help you relate our talking points on a more global, well-recognized scale. Sometimes we use exact examples of either famous persons or successful business owners of today or in history. And sometimes we use examples of people who inspire us and have inspired today's discussion.
Yeah, I didn't find anybody I wanted to use. I'm sorry. No, so I looked around and I was really hoping to find like a really lengthy somehow discussion about like an entrepreneur, like who like has people pleasing tendencies. So whatnot. I found a lot of celebrities, not to say that they're not entrepreneurial at all or anything, but unfortunately what they were saying was really more toward the celebrityism than it is toward like applied in business. So I scratched all of that. And I was like, I'm not using any of those as an example. So I'm sorry.
That's okay. Cause I got somebody.
You got somebody? Was it from history?
Naturally. There are so many great entrepreneurs out there, but not much focus on how their personalities drove their successes. Of course, we all know the most successful people are the ones who don't give up, but that's only a portion of the story. So much of the person's personality has to do with the road to success they end up on. I don't know that there's anyone who doesn't know who Peter Rabbit is.
Well, did the younger kids these days know?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know
because there's the movies.
There's the movie. That's true. It has stayed relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Who didn't love a good Peter Rabbit book?
This story has endured for 120-ish years. 121 years, I guess, to be exact, and is still just as loved now as it was then. But did you know that the author and illustrator Beatrix Potter was also an entrepreneur?
Of course I did not.
No, of course you didn't.
Nope.
Potter has been recognized as an author, artist, scientist, and conservationist. As an entrepreneur, she pioneered licensing and merchandising literary characters. Potter built a retail empire that is worth $500 million today, and in the process, she created a system that continues to benefit all licensed characters from Mickey Mouse to Harry Potter. She didn't allow rejection to deter her. She self-published when all the publishing houses said no. She sold the book at 1 shilling when everyone told her she'd lose money. So I'm going to speak to that. Every publishing house she went to told her that they wanted a picture book. She had just had too many words in her books.
Oh, how dare her?
How dare she? You woman.
Educating our youth.
Yes, exactly. So she said, no, I do believe that there need to be words with these illustrations. And so when no one would agree with her, that's when she self-published. Also, everyone told her she needed to sell it for 6 shillings. And she goes, no, then the children who are, of the lesser demographic would not be able to afford it. And the reasoning for it is because she wanted to help these poorer children be more literate, because there was such illiteracy at that time. We're talking late 1800s.
Oh, yeah.
1901.
Class issues and stuff like that at that time, too.
For sure. The Victorian era was really harsh on those who just have-nots.
So I'm sure it's not confirmed. There's no, there's nothing on Google that says that Beatrix Potter was a people pleaser, I'm assuming.
I'm getting to it.
Oh, is there really something on Google that says that? Okay. I was going to say, imagine if she listened to all the people around her because she didn't want to make them feel bad. But go right ahead. Never mind. I'm jumping ahead. What do I know?
I'm getting to it. So, she created multiple revenue streams when it was clear she would have to support herself financially to reach her ultimate goal.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. She is an INFP, which is a healer type. She holds the oldest patent in the world and is true to her personality type. Healers tend to be people pleasers.
So wait, what is INFP and healer type? What's that from?
Myers-Briggs.
Oh, that is straight from Myers-Briggs. I didn't realize healer type was actually from Myers-Briggs. I thought it was just the letters.
Nope, both. An imaginative idealist, she was guided by her own core values and beliefs. To a healer, possibilities are paramount. The realism of the moment is only of passing concern. They see potential for a better future and pursue truth and meaning with their own individual flair. So she was a good balance of people pleaser and forward thinker, I guess.
Well, that's a good combination.
Mm-hmm. According to the Smithsonian, Potter wasn't the only writer to merchandise her work. As early as 1744, there were dolls based on the books of John Newbery, the father of children's literature, and the namesake for the award, the Newbery Award. In Canada, Palmer Cox's popular brownies were used on a variety of advertising products and merchandise. Even Potter's contemporaries, like the Wizard of Oz author L. Frank Baum, were busy commercializing their books with stage plays and souvenirs. But what made Potter's approach unique is the amount of merchandise she sold and the patents she was able to secure. Because, yeah, she rocked. She combined legal protection with marketing instincts and creative vision to make a successful product line. In modern terms, she created a brand out of her artistic work, an approach that has been imitated ever since. Those endeavors were successful because Potter never forgot her customer, the children who loved her books.
No.
So I'm not really delving too deep into her people-pleasing tendencies, but that was very, very much her signature. She wanted to please the children. She wanted to make the children happy. She wanted the mothers to be happy. And that was the driving force behind every decision she made, was to ensure there was a smile on every child's face.
Yeah.
And I think that might be a quote, a direct quote, because I read a lot about her and I was like, wow, she really only cared about the children and how was she going to make them happy, because they were essentially her clients. I mean, even if it wasn't them buying the book, it was them that were, tugging on the curtails of the, So she saw that books could be an unlimited market. Even little books that children could hold, says Lear, for if they fell in love with Peter and they wanted more, why not? The original article will be posted in our show notes.
Very nice. Very nicely done. History, as well as somehow proving the fact that she may be a people pleaser. I thought that was pretty funny.
Put a little bow on it and a knot.
But I think it's a good point to make that with her story too. Is like, again, your tendencies in the right context may not be a weakness. It may be a strength, right? So it's almost like it's kind of hard to kind of judge it on strengths and weaknesses. It's just in the context. And does it get to where you want to be?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're two people pleasers that were successful, so why not?
Something went right.
Something went right.
Or did it?
Yes, I'm going to say yes.
That's right.
We did.
Right. That was a test. You passed.
Yes. Okay. So with each episode, we like to share either books, tools, apps, or platforms, or anything we think is a great next step and connector to our discussion. So if you like our subject matter and want to learn more, you'll have a great place to start.
So there's a lot of personality tests out there. And then there's also, funny enough, a lot of books too. I was like, okay. And a lot of articles. Like if you Google it, you'll be able to find
oh my gosh,
really easily to see all the articles. I mean, because we shifted through all of them.
Yep.
Yes, that's right. But I think having a personality test, even the free ones you get online, is just as good. I know that Myers-Briggs, a lot of people have like some arguments whether or not that's effective anymore. It's not effective anymore. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I think what's important is self-awareness.
Yes.
Right. And so if you can't be self-aware enough yourself and you need a little boost, then a personality test would be really helpful to you. Right. And then you can kind of decide what aspects of the personality you want to learn about. So I think at the end of the day, self-awareness, I think that's my recommendation. I'm not going to recommend any particular personality test or anything, because I've only taken a few and I'm not an expert on any of them. I just know they're helpful. I mean, I do get slightly annoyed when I read something. I'm like, that's not me. Okay, maybe it's a little me. Okay, right. But just kind of take it with a grain of salt. This is all free stuff online, guys, right? But if you do get a chance to actually do a self, the personality test, it's certainly helpful. But anyways, my very long and short recommendation is just self-awareness. Understand who you are, understand your triggers. Try not, I know this is going to sound really like out there, but try not to follow your emotions all the time. Try to work on distinguishing fact from feelings. That can really be helpful when you're in business. And have a good friend to talk about it with you, right? If you can't get out of your own head, sometimes it helps to have somebody else who's willing to be direct and honest, to talk aloud with them. Just make sure that you find somebody you trust, somebody who's not going to judge you, but don't get mad at them when they tell you the truth either.
Like, yes, you are the drama.
Yeah. So, hey.
I personally use Truity.com for their tests. It's free and it's also paid. So I guess it depends on, what kind of test you want to have. And they have a few different types of tests so that you could take, whatever one it is. They're very affordable too. And you can use it on yourself, or you could use it on your team, or you could use it on your team. If you like to read, there's a great book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, Empowering Organizations by Encouraging People, by Gary Chapman and Paul White. I mean, everybody takes the information differently, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm recommending the book. I also like Gallup.com. This pulls out the strengths and weaknesses of you and your team to know how everyone works best. So you can approach them and assign them to their strengths.
Yeah, that's good. And if you are in a place that you can hire like direct help in your, there's a lot of like organizational productivity, like coaches and whatnot that works specifically with personalities of your organization, which could be super useful, especially if you just can't figure out the problem yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because who knows, maybe you're a drama, maybe you're not, maybe it's a combination of everybody in your group that's a drama, who knows? But it's certainly worthwhile because, like I was saying, end of the day, business is about people.
Yeah.
So, you got to figure the people problem out, like people question out. So I think it's definitely worth the investment, assuming that you're in a place to do it.
These are all good places to start, but don't take it as the hard line. You are likely going to be doing self-reflection for the rest of your life. So
It's so exciting.
it is. And you've probably already started doing some self-reflection in your personal life. Just bring it on over to the business side.
You got it.
And then join us for our next episode where we will discuss. So you decided you want to sell your business. Now what? What will you need to sell your business? So you're going to be doing a lot of talking on that.
Well, that might be a 3-part series.
It might. Yeah. Please show us your support by following us on your preferred podcast platform, social media, and YouTube. And we'd love for you to also share our episodes. And, if you got any criticisms or you got suggestions, if you have questions for us, I would love to do a Q&A episode. That would be great.
We'll answer your questions live.
Yes, I would love an opportunity to do that because, that could even be something that we could talk about it later. But I feel like that's something that we could talk to.
You just want an AMA, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Anyway, so we'd love for you to share our episodes. All of our links are posted below. And until next time, mind the business behind your small business because all great successes start small.
We're done.